All right, so our goals for today are we're wanting to confidently navigate the contract to close process. I want you to be able to understand the importance of each step in the process, not just check the box, and then to be able to leave with a roadmap and a process to get to the closing table. So what I've created, I'll show it to you guys in a minute. I have an Excel version because I love Excel and I know some people prefer it. And then I also have a PDF version. So you can have either one for your transaction checklist. And it's actually going to go from very first time you meet a client until you get to the closing table. So when you get their lead information, what you need to do then, how you need to get prepared to work with the buyer or the seller, all the way to the end. What we're going to cover today is just once you get under contract. So the contract to close process, but you will have all those beginning pieces in the checklist also. All right, so I've got a little short video to start off with. I hope the sound works.
A slow home buyer is a no home buyer. Navigating the real estate world requires cat-like reflexes. No, that's too early. Requires cat-like reflexes. Ow. Cat-like. This isn't that hard, guys. When I say reflexes, what if I throw the ball back and you reverse it on film? Sextile theater Kyle tag. Run that backwards. It's cat-like reflex.
Whoops. So just a little Phil Dunphy to start the day with. I miss Modern Family. That was such a good show. So now he says that navigating the real estate market involves cat-like reflexes, but I think that more importantly involves a process. And we want to set you up with a process so you can have a checklist to give your buyers and sellers exactly what they're looking for. So start off with, these are just top 6 services that buyers would like. Number 1 is access to current, active, and sold data. We are definitely giving them that through FMLS. A buyer packet with information about the buyer process, including contracts. A process to find the right house at the right price without missing anything. A proactive, competent realtor they can trust to look out for their needs and help them navigate the process. And then a smooth transaction that closes on time with no or few surprises. We know that we can't always control those surprises, but we'll do our best to navigate through them. That's why having this checklist is going to be so important for you guys to know what comes next and to prepare your buyers and sellers for that. And then consistent communication. I think that is one that when we're doing our buyer or seller consultations and you ask them what they're looking for, I always hear that. That's the number one thing is they want consistent communication. So before working with buyers and sellers, we want to, number 1, examine our mindset. Our goal is always to add value at every step of the transaction. We want to look at customer experience versus customer service. I was on a call last week and the speaker was talking about the difference between the two. Came up, she asked, what do you think is the most important part of our job? And everyone said customer service. And she said, no, you are wrong. Most important part is the customer experience. We want from start to finish them to have an experience because that's what you go rave about to your friends, to your family. That's what you share when you have a great experience from start to finish. And then also remember that luxury is a level of service, not a price point. So again, with the customer experience level, we are just showing them that luxurious treatment from start to finish, where we are holding their hands, we're preparing them and showing that we're professional and that we have a process. And then the number 2 step, I think, is preparation. We prepare with our skills. So we have knowledge of contracts and technology, our market knowledge by researching the target market and what's going on in a broader scope in the macro market. And then we take classes on negotiation. We brush up on our negotiation skills. And most importantly, the process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so I have broken our checklist up into 5 different sections. So for buyers, we have the new lead activities. Then we're going to have pre-search activities. Those are the things that you're doing when you're setting them up on their FMLS search. You're preparing them for what the market looks like and getting them set up with a lender, et cetera. Then you have search activities. That's when you're out looking at the houses. Contract to close activities and post-closing activities are what we're going to discuss today, though. And then the same for sellers. You've got the new lead activities where you meet your new client for the first time. You're putting them in your CRM, sending them that personal note. The pre-listing activities, we're going over the comps, doing your pre-listing presentation and your listing presentation. Then you have your listing and your marketing activities when you're actually getting the property ready for the market. You're taking photographs, you're staging, you're doing all of your MIA and your AdWorks ads. Then your contract to close activities, once you get a go binding, and your post-closing activities, which we're going to speak about today. All right, so today we're going to cover, you have a binding contract, you finally got an acceptance on the buying side, or you've gone through all your multiple offers on the seller side, and now what do we do? So we're going to start with buyers. We're going to start with the contract to close activity. So this is once you have your accepted offer, you have it in app files, what do we do next? The number one thing you want to do is turn your binding contract into your office via app files. I know that every office has a different process of who you're supposed to notify and when and how, but most of the time, I think that you're going to need to create an update to alert your office transaction coordinator that you have a binding contract. And then you'll want to complete the DPN and app files and also create an update to alert them that you've created that also. So this is what the DPN looks like. This is anyone's first time seeing the DPN. If it is, that's totally okay. So what the DPN is, this is how the office and accounting is going to process your contract. So when you're in app files, you can just search for DPN. I think it's actually called the new DPN. Can someone confirm that for me? So what you'll do is there's a color code on there. I don't know how easy this will be for you to see since your slide's probably a little smaller than mine, but you're basically filling out the information about the contract. So you have the property information that you're under contract on. If you are the listing agent, then you'll want to list that information. You're going to put your seller's information on here. If you are the selling agent or the listing agent, and if you're the buyer's agent, you'll complete that information also. This is so we can contact them in the future. We know all of their information. Then you're going to put the co-op agent's information. And then if it's a Harry Norman relo, you'll put that in here. If there's earnest money involved, you fill that part out. So, and then also there's a section that if you are doing a referral to another agent, you can put that percentage in there for the commission and the volume that goes in there also. So this is a really important part of the process. And when you don't fill it out, you're going to have your transaction coordinator sending you an email saying, where is the DPN?
It is called the new DPN.
It is the new DPN. Stuart?
Yeah, so acronyms kind of drive me crazy if I don't know what they mean. Can you tell me what DPN stands for, please?
You know what? Avery confirmed this. Is it
It stands
data?
for Data Processing Network.
Thank you. Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
Emily coming in clutch.
I knew someone would know it. Data Processing Network. Okay.
The Data
great.
Processing Network. So basically, I mean, this is how you're getting paid, right? This is going to our not only the listing coordinators in your office, but also our accounting department. So Data Processing Network.
So once they get your commission check, this is how they're going to know how to pay you.
Yeah. Very important.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for the question, Stuart. All right, so the next step in the process is you're going to send your binding contract and a next step / important dates email to your client. is you want to make sure that they know exactly when everything is happening. They need a copy of the binding contract. You want to make sure they understand when their due diligence ends, when their earnest money is due, how to turn in the earnest money, if it's going to be by a check and you're going to meet them, or if they're going to deposit it online through our Harry Norman portal. Financing contingency and appraisal contingency ending dates. Those are super important as well, especially in this market. You want to make sure they're on top of everything with the financing, getting all of the information to their lender ASAP. Another thing that I always like to add, and I think Avery was the one that told me to add this when I first started, was do not make any big purchases until after you close, because they will recheck your credit. Even big appliances, let's just hold off on that. So that is, I actually have all those things in a template, a sample letter that's on the cloud that you can just copy and paste into your email. And I'm going to send you all the links for all of these things when we're done, so you can have these at your fingertips. But I just think this is a really important step of the process, and it's another level of that customer experience and luxurious treatment that you can offer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
There's a GAR form that's in app files that I've called reminder of important dates.
Yes.
It sounds like your list is more comprehensive. So would we use your list or our internal list versus the GAR form?
You can use whichever one you prefer. I personally liked sending an email because I thought it was a little bit more of a personal touch.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to go through app files to do it. But that's totally up to you, whichever you prefer.
Okay.
And then next, you'll want to send the binding contract to the closing attorney and the lender as soon as possible, especially in this tight market where we're having very quick closing dates and very quick financing dates. You want to make sure they get that immediately. You don't want to hold on to it. We actually had a meeting last week, a leadership meeting, and Campbell and Brannon was in there speaking to us about the importance of this. Even if you think that you may end up terminating, like you think the inspection may be rocky, still send it to Campbell and Brannon and the attorney and the lender the second you go under contract, so they can start working on it. They would much rather start working on the contract, pulling title, checking everything out, and be ahead of the game, and then you terminate, than you hold on to it and turn it in late. Does that make sense?
Yeah, one of the things, Tori, that I learned that I didn't know and didn't find anywhere was how to send it to the attorney. And I don't know about the lender, but that would be an important piece of information to have in an instruction, is you go to their website and here's how you navigate to get there.
Right. So depending on the attorney, they're going to have a different method. Some have a portal. If it's Campbell and Brannon, you can just send it to their office, depending on which office you're closing at. I think it's usually closings at whatever office it is for Campbell and Brannon, and you can find that on their website.
It was title or something. It was an odd, well, at least the last one I did was an odd.
Odd one. Okay. Well, that would be, I'll look into getting a list of those and having those on the cloud too, because that would be really nice for you guys to have that at your fingertips to be able to reference. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to put it on my to-do list real quick. And then the lender, you should have already had conversations with their lender, find out about their financing, how long the financing and appraisal and those contingencies should be. So hopefully you already have a relationship with the lender and you know how they want to receive the contract, whether it's through like their coordinator or directly to them. And then next, you'll want to add the important dates to your calendar. I think this is a very important step of the process. So you have set up reminders so you know when these different deadlines are coming to a close. Make this a habit to stay organized with the reminders on your calendar. If you're a paper calendar person, totally fine. Just maybe put a reminder in it a couple of days early that due diligence ends in 2 days, or, due diligence is one I think you're going to know really off the top of your head when that ends. But when you have a couple of different contracts going on at once, the financing and the appraisal contingencies, those are the ones that you can tend to forget or get confused, and they can sneak up on you. So especially if you're, in a normal, not crazy market, when we're looking at, 21, 24 day appraisal contingencies, those are easy to, slip your mind. So just make sure you're putting a reminder in there. And this is also going to remind you to contact your client about the important dates, further enhancing that customer experience. So next up, you'll want to confirm that they have turned in their earnest money, whether it's depositing it through Harry Norman or if they're going to have to deposit it a different way. Sometimes, the buyer's agent will require them to hold it at the attorney's office, et cetera. Obviously, every situation is going to be different, but we prefer when you're representing the buyer that it's turned into Harry Norman. And our earnest money deposit is very easy to do online. So there's also a link to how to do that on that template that I was sharing about the important dates email. And then if it is turned in through Harry Norman, your office staff is going to notify you through app files once it's been processed, and you can let the listing agent know that you have it. And sometimes they'll request a copy. Then you can assist the buyers in scheduling the inspections, the survey, and any other vendors. Most of the time, especially in this market, you're probably going to already have an inspection scheduled. The second you go under contract, even before you go under contract is helpful sometimes. Home Pro will let you do that when you're still in negotiations. Pro tip would be to include your preferred vendor list in your buyer presentation or your binder. That way, they know if you have a specific surveyor that you recommend, you can start the process on that, or if you have decorators, electricians, anyone that you may need to get in during due diligence or before you close. This way your buyer has access to that also. Next up, you'll want to negotiate and create your amendment to address concerns in app files if you are going to ask for any repairs or concessions during due diligence. That would be next up on your checklist. And then again, you're always going to want to create an update to alert your office transaction coordinator that has been added in there. And then you'll want to send all amendments to the closing attorney and the lender once they're created in app files. I'm just getting a good habit of doing that immediately once one's created, even if it's something as simple as you're changing, a date on something, or you need to change the address was supposed to be northwest instead of northeast. All of those need to go to all parties of the transaction.
And kind of to my previous point, my question here is, because I haven't done this before, does that also go as a regular email to their closer person or their pre-person, or does that have to go back through that same portal?
Again, every lender and closing attorney is going to have a different process. Like with Campbell and Brannon, you'll get a pre-closer assigned to you. So you'll probably just send it directly to them. And you'll have an email chain that you'll get accustomed just replying all to. So definitely make sure the pre-closer has it. And the same thing with the lender. They'll probably have someone assigned to you that you'll directly communicate with. So again, just send all the amendments to the closing attorney and lender once you create those. Next up, you'll want to complete the instructions to closing attorney and send to the closing attorney. The best practice when representing the buyer would be to initiate this from app files, because the 225 flat portion of the commission is already preloaded in that form. You can definitely, add it in if the listing agent has sent the instructions to closing attorney over to you. You could add that stipulation in there the 225 is going to be paid by the buyer, copy and paste it from app files. But a best practice would be to go ahead and do it yourself. I've had the question, what if you don't know, you'll see on the listing what your percentage is going to be when you're representing the buyer, right? So say your percentage is 3%, is what we all hope for. but you don't know if the listing agent has reduced their commission. You can leave their portion blank and just put your portion in, and they can add that in, if that makes sense. And then next up, you'll want to schedule a pre-closing walkthrough. That's generally done a day or two before closing, and it is a very important step of the process, right? There's many reasons why you're going to need to go and do the pre-closing walkthrough. Number one would be to make sure the house is still in the same condition it was when you put the offer in on the house, right? That they have not removed anything, they've not changed the paint color. You want to make sure that all of those items that are on the seller's property disclosure that were staying in the property are still there. So, you know, that they didn't remove the refrigerator when they said they were going to leave it, and vice versa. You want to make sure that they didn't leave things that they weren't supposed to leave. You don't want to clean up their trash. You don't want to, you know, they weren't supposed to leave a bed in the basement. You don't want that bed in there. If you've had repairs that were supposed to be done through due diligence, you always want to make sure that you get a receipt for those repairs once those have been paid, or once those have been done, and you can include that in your amendment to address concerns, that they'll provide you with a paid receipt. But you also want to walk through and make sure that everything was done properly. If they were supposed to repair a leaking sink, you want to make sure it was actually repaired. Even though you got the invoice, you want to make sure that it was done. And, you know, another good thing to do is make sure all the lights are still working. Make sure the water's on before you move in. Check the burners on the stove. I mean, my practice when I would walk through is we would flip every switch, we would turn on every faucet and flush every toilet, right? Does anyone else have anything to add that they like to do during the pre-closing walkthrough, or that you think is important that I've not covered? Just a little story from when I was selling. I was actually the listing agent on this property, and I always like to share this story when buyers say, oh, we don't need to do a pre-listing walkthrough. You know, it was only 2 weeks ago that we were there. It'll be fine. We don't have time. This is a little, you know, nugget that you could share with people is I was a listing agent. This was, I think it was beginning of 2020 when we had rain for basically every day of January, and there were a lot of leaks. Well, the buyers went to do their pre-closing walkthrough the day before, and there was water in the basement. And so we pushed closing, we figured it out, we negotiated it, but had they not gone to do that pre-closing walkthrough, they would have never known. And they were able to get compensation for that leak and to get it repaired because they went and did the walkthrough. So that's just a little example of why it is so important to go check everything out. Let me see, I have something in the chat. Avery says, crank the heat and the AC depending on the time of year. Check under cabinets and make sure nothing is leaking while the water is running. Yep, very good points. And then next up, you would want to send the buyer a pre-closing email with the wire fraud warning, directions to the closing, the date and time of closing, what they need to bring. Make sure that they bring their forms of ID. I always suggest bringing a checkbook in case the numbers change a little bit from when they wire their down payment. We have a buyer pre-closing letter template on the cloud also that I'm going to show you that has all the wire fraud warnings on it. And just, I think Emily and Ashu worked to create this a little while back, and it is a great example to send your buyers. We always want to start having the discussion about wire fraud really when you initially start working with your buyer, because you've got to tell people things many, many times. And wire fraud is rampant right now, especially with the number of transactions that are happening. So always remind your buyers that they will never receive wire instructions from you. They will never receive them from their lender. The only person they will receive wire instructions for is going to be the closing attorney. And most of the time they are going to be encrypted and through a portal. So just let them know if they have questions, if they are doubting that it's not a legitimate email from the closing attorney, call the closing attorney and confirm, because the fraudsters are very, very smart. They know how to trick us. So they can make it look like it's coming from you, and it's not. So just let them know this will never come from you. It's only going to come from the closing attorney. And then order a closing gift. If this is part of your customer service experience, go ahead and have that done. You don't want to be running the day of closing, because I've done that many times, stressed, running to get the gift. So prepare in advance. I always kept kind of a stock in my house of gifts that I could use. I love to give like Georgia themed items. So anytime I would see them at Home Goods, I'd stock up so I could make a cute little basket. So just keep that. I just like keeping that as part of your transaction checklist, so you don't forget to do it.
Tori,
Yes.
when you said that you walked into the basement and they saw a leak,
Mm-hmm.
what is your next step besides calling the agent saying we have a problem? What do you do next?
So I was the listing agent, so they called me. And I kind of had a little heart attack, but we worked through it. I went over there. What we did was we ended up all agreeing to extend closing for, I think we did like a week. So we had to execute an amendment to delay closing, and we didn't have to use the unilateral because we all agreed on it. And it was nothing due to the closing attorneys or the lenders. This was an issue with the house. So first we executed an amendment to change the closing date. We let the attorney know and the lender know what was happening. And then from that point, I started calling repair people. And like I said, this was in January, everyone was busy. So it took a couple of days to get somebody out there. They gave us a quote. I think we ended up getting 2 quotes. And we were able to get the repairs done. It thankfully was not a big issue where we had to delay it, weeks upon weeks. We were able to get it, fixed pretty quickly. And then we issued another amendment stating what would happen, that the seller was going to repair. They would provide the paid invoice to the buyer within X amount of days. And that's how we handled that situation. Another one that I had, similarly, I was listing agent on this one also. This was like in the middle of August. They go do the pre-closing walkthrough and the AC went out.
Oh.
So thankfully we were able, this was the morning of closing, they did it too. So we were able to delay it for a day, got an AC person out there to service it. And, again, it wasn't a huge expense. We didn't have to replace the whole furnace or anything, but it was where we had to do the same thing. We had to issue an amendment to extend closing, and then also for what repairs are going to be done.
Okay, got it. I just needed to know those steps for myself in case that.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Karen's asking, where in the cloud are these saved? So everything I'm going to show you is going to be saved under career services, and then agent resources, and then working with buyers or working with sellers. So I've not actually put the checklist in there yet. So I'll send everyone the links that signed up for the class to where those are located after class.
Can you say that again? Career resource, and then what was it?
So you're going to go to company public, and then career services, agent resources. And then I have folders in that folder. One is titled Working with Buyers, and one is titled Working with Sellers, where you'll be able to find these checklists. And when we get done going through the buyer portion, I will show you what they look like. All right, so next up, you'll want to confirm clear title with the closing attorney. What does this mean? This means clear title states that the owner of real property owns it free and clear of encumbrances. So that is one thing you're going to want to make sure has happened, so you're moving to the closing table at the right time. And then next up, you're going to want to confirm the closing disclosure, which you're going to hear called a CD more often, has been received and acknowledged by the buyer. I just pulled up a 3-day closing disclosure rule. This is a really helpful chart where you can see when it's going to be due. So what is the closing disclosure? This shows the actual interest rate, the monthly payments, the closing costs, and cash required to close. This goes to your buyer. It must be received and acknowledged 3 business days prior to closing, or your closing will be delayed. And that is no negotiation. That is a federal law that has to happen. Pro tip, add this to your calendar. I would add it to your calendar, not just 3 days before, but 2 to 3 days before that 3-day deadline. So you can check in with the lender to make sure the CD is scheduled to go out on time. If you look at this chart where the 3-day closing disclosure rule is, you can easily back into when it's going to be due, because it does get a little confusing, I have to say sometimes. So if you're closing on a Monday, for example, the closing disclosures must be received and acknowledged by the buyer the previous Thursday. And then you can go forward through this chart and see when it has to be due. So if you're closing on a Friday, it needs to be received and acknowledged on the previous Tuesday. These can come through email. That's what that yellow chart portion is. The mail disclosures, that's the red part at the bottom. But email acknowledgement and receipt is allowed. Someone's asking, in today's market where seller stays after closing with a temporary occupancy, do you schedule a walkthrough pre-closing and pre-possession? Yes, good question. I would suggest even putting that as a special stipulation on your temporary occupancy exhibit, that the buyer has the right to walk through X number of days prior to closing, right, and to move out. So that was a really good question. Thank you for asking that. Next up, you're going to want to confirm that the buyer has sent the wire to the closing attorney. Once they receive the closing disclosures and they see what their cash to close number is, and the closing attorney has sent the wire instructions, they are free to wire. It is always a good idea to let them know that the numbers could change slightly. So it's a good idea to bring a checkbook to closing if they need to write a check for the difference. If they over wire, sometimes buyers like to do that, send a couple of $100 over what is needed to close, just to be sure, so they don't have to write a check. If they do that, Campbell and Brannon or the closing attorney will give them a check at closing for the difference that they over wired. And then you're going to want to attend the pre-closing walkthrough that we discussed. Again, you're going to want to confirm any repairs have been made, confirm that the property is vacant, if it's supposed to be vacant, confirm all checked fixtures on that seller's property disclosure remain with the property, check the water, the gas, the etc. And then attend closing. That's the fun part. So we're going to get to celebrate and be the trusted advisor for your clients. If they have any questions while they're at closing, you can help them with that.
One of the things you might add to your list, we've been reminded by our transaction coordinator a couple of times, that if the earnest money that is deposited is larger than the commission, then you need to let the transaction person know 2 or 3 days prior to closing, because there's some monetary transactions that have to occur between Harry Norman and the closing attorney.
Yes, so that's a very good point. Right now, we are seeing very high earnest money amounts in this market to show that your buyer has a lot of skin in the game and that they're excited to purchase the house. So if the earnest money has been deposited to Harry Norman, what will happen at closing is, if it is more than the commissions amount or equal to, Harry Norman has that money already and they'll distribute the money to you. If the earnest money, say it was $20,000 and the commission's only going to be $10,000, Harry Norman's going to need to wire that difference to the closing attorney to fund that loan at the before closing. So that's a really good point that you're going to need to think that through and let your transaction coordinator know a couple of days prior to closing so that wire can be made. So next up would be your post-closing activities. You've left the closing table and you're done, right? Not so fast. There's some important things that need to happen to get you paid, number one, and to continue a relationship with your client. So number one, I would say you are going to need to upload the final settlement statement to app files and notify your office. Campbell and Brannon will usually email this to you, which is awesome. Some closing attorneys are not going to email it to you. So you're going to have the paper copy that you're going to take, you're going to scan in, you're going to give it to your transaction coordinator. Every office has a different process, but regardless of how the process works, you want to make sure you get that into app files. And then next step is you're going to turn your commission check into the office if it was not wired. Most closing attorneys are going to wire it to us, especially Campbell and Brannon, but you're not going to get paid until the company has that commission. And then post that you sold the property or you closed on it on social media. Share those fun pictures with your clients that you take at the closing table. Share a nice picture of the house. This is a great way to show your success. Always send a thank you card in the mail to your clients. Even if, I like to add this as part of my transaction checklist, even though I've given them a closing gift and I've thanked them then, this is another touch point. Couple weeks, couple days after closing, send them a personal note in the mail, telling them how excited you are for them. If you donate a portion of your commission to our community fund for Greater Atlanta, I always include that in that letter. I say, thank you for your business. Thank you for letting me be able to contribute a portion of my closing commission to the community fund. You're helping me help Atlanta. And then your offices should have some cute little marketing pieces on the fund, so you can include that in there also. And I just think that's a great touch point with your clients. And if you have no idea of what I'm talking about, you can talk to your broker about it. You can elect to contribute a percentage or a flat rate of each closing to our community fund for Greater Atlanta. And that's done through the office. You don't have to think about it. It's tax write-off. And it's just a great way to give back. And then,
sorry.
No, you're fine. I love your engagement.
I go into great detail. So if it's not Campbell and Brannon, my first closing experience was with a attorney that had not closed with Harry Norman either in a long time or something, because they needed a copy of the I-9. So that might be something to add to your list as well. Check with the closing attorney to see if they need an I-9, and you can get that to them before.
Yes. And they'll usually let you know if they need it, but that is a really, really good point, and more so of a reason to work with our family of services, because they make it easy on us, right? We don't have to do as much work. So send an email requesting reviews. So you're going to get that QSC email is going to be sent out directly from QSC to your clients requesting a review. Think about where your audience is. I liked to send an email requesting reviews on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google, because that's where my audience was. That's where my people are. So I created a template in the CRM where I sent out links to those platforms and asked my clients to review me on there. And I also would include a bomb video I would insert to make it even more personal, saying, a quick little intro. Thank you so much for working together. I can't believe it's been, 2 weeks since we closed. I kind of try to space this out a little bit. but I can't believe it's been 2 weeks since we closed. I hope you're getting settled into the house. A big portion of my business comes from referrals. And first thing people do is go look me up online. So if you could take a quick minute to leave a review on one of these platforms, I would greatly appreciate it. And then once they do leave a review, always make sure that you are thanking them for their time and sharing the review also. And then next up, I would send a thank you to your referral source, because referrals are such a big part of our business, and people that are sending you referrals, you want to love on them. I suggest keeping them in the loop throughout the transaction. Once they refer you to somebody, let them know, thank you so much. I mean, I would send a card immediately thanking them for the referral. I like to send a Starbucks gift card, you know, really love on your referral sources, and then keep them in the loop. I mean, you don't have to give them all the details, but just let them know, I got Avery under contract. We're so excited. We're moving through the process. I really enjoy working with her. You know, thank you so much. And that way they'll know that you are treating their friends and family well, and, you know, it makes them look good. Check the chat real quick. What if there is a different charity we would like to send it to? So you can certainly donate a portion of your commission to a different charity than the Harry Norman Philanthropy Fund. It just won't be done through your commission check. So you'll have to do that separately, but you could certainly do that and let your clients know that that's part of your business plan, is that you donate to charities. And you could, you know, have your marketing department create a little card for you for that specific charity. I think that's a great idea. The plus to doing it through the Harry Norman Philanthropy Fund is the company does match a portion of those donations. So it's kind of like your dollar is getting stretched further than if it was just you making the donation. Each individual office gets to choose the specific philanthropy fund that their donations go to. I know in East Cobb, we had a committee that helped to choose those organizations. So it was just it was a fun process. And, you know, we chose something that was kind of local to East Cobb and to that area. So, you know, I would talk to your broker, get involved in that if you have a specific philanthropy that you would like to donate to. Next up, make sure you change your buyer's mailing address in the CRM. They have moved, they have a new house, so go ahead and add that in there. So when you are doing your marketing pieces, you have that information. Add their home anniversary date in the CRM. So you are aware next year when it comes up, you can send them a card, you can send them, you know, some people like to send a dozen donuts for 12 months in your new home, something cute like that. And then I always scheduled my 1-year home anniversary email in the CRM as part of my post-closing checklist. So there is a template in there that you can put a picture in, you can personalize it, you can go ahead and schedule that out for a year from today. So it is already ready to go. You can set it and forget it. All right, so before we go on to the sellers, I want to show you some of these documents I've been talking about. All right. Okay, so this is, hold on one second. I got used to working on my 2 screens, and I'm working from home today and I only have 1 screen. So now I'm getting used to doing that again. Okay, this is the transaction checklist that's in Excel. Can everyone see my Excel right now? So there's a tab for buyers and a tab for sellers. So we just went through the buyers. So I've got where you can include, like in column B, if this is your client, you would put their name, John Smith. I mean, if you're familiar with Excel, you can add, you can take away, if you want to personalize this to you, and then you can put the address here, 123 Main Street. And then we've got the new lead activities. And then once you do these, you can put an X in here that you've done it. You can highlight it, whatever you need to do. So this is going all the way from when you get the new lead and this is probably really small for you guys to see, down to the pre-search activities, the search activities, contract to close activities, which we just went through, and then your post-closing activities. And then we have the same thing in here for the seller, just slightly altered. And then I'll show you where I have it in PDF version. Y'all see this? Okay, so here is the buyer transaction checklist. So you could print one of these off for each buyer if you want to keep, if you're a paper person. And it's the same exact activities, just in a different format. Okay, I've got a couple of things in the chat. Let me see. Can you share that with everyone? Yes, this is going to be shared. They're going to be on the cloud. I just haven't transferred them over to your folder yet because I wanted you guys to be the first people to see this. This has been like a labor of love to get this done. So I'm going to put them on the cloud and send you guys out the links to all of this when we're done, especially I'll send out the PowerPoint as well. And then let me show you these letters that I referenced that we've got the template.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So is there a way to download or upload these documents to our app file for each individual client? Because this is awesome. I'm just wondering if there's a way to have them all in the same place.
So you could definitely upload that PDF checklist into app files if you wanted to have it that way. And you could just insert like a little check mark when you get to each step of the process. I mean, that's actually a really good idea. We could probably look into having it turned into a form in app files. Emily, you may know better than me, but if that can be done, but I'll have to talk to app files about that. But all of these are on the cloud. You can download them and then upload them into app files. And if you're in the cloud and you click on a document and it does not give you an option to print or download, you need to email IT. Because I've talked to a couple of people that when they're in their cloud, it does not give them that option when they click on a document. And that's just a setting that needs to be changed. So make sure you email tech and have that changed, because these are useless to you if you can't do anything with them. And I want you to be able to do something with them.
Corey, is that other document an editable document to where you can check the boxes and use it electronically? Yeah.
No, but I can have Drew turn it into a form.
So if you have Drew turn that into a form, then anybody I don't know who that was that asked the question about putting it in app files, but if you have Drew make that document into a form to where people can, click and select the boxes online, then it'll be really easy to have that uploaded into app files if somebody wants to put that in their buyer template and their seller template. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll have Drew's on vacation this week, so we're gonna have to wait a week for that. Convenient. I know. So I will have him make it to an editable form and we can put in app files and we can have those upload into the in-house forms. I think that's a great idea. Someone direct messaged me that they get the following message when they try to access my H&R Cloud. Sorry, you don't have access. So that's another thing. You need to email tech and let them know exactly what your message says and that you can't access it, because we got to get that fixed. There's lots of good tools on the cloud for you. Okay, so this is that next steps and important dates checklist that I was telling you about, or template that you can copy and paste into your email for your buyers. Just congratulates them. Then you can add the important dates, due diligence. You want to tell them blank will be day one of due diligence and it will end on blank date. You can also include a due diligence checklist of things that they should be thinking of doing. This reminds them of their earnest money and when and how it's due. Financing, telling them, once the financing contingency is up, you're locked into buying the house or your earnest money is at risk. So it's important to note the loan officer will check your debts again right before closing. And then just a nice thank you. And then lastly, before we move on to the seller, let me show you this buyer pre-closing draft email. So this is the email where you're going to give them the wire fraud warning, the date and time and location of their closing, what they need to bring to closing, picture ID, a second form of ID, a checkbook, etc. So these are all ready for you. Emily, are you trying to talk?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have this in app files and in-house forms.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. And
It's also
it's Harry Norman branded. I know that's the hard thing with all of the classes and offerings that we have. There's so much available that sometimes it's hard to decipher what we have. So yeah, that's in your in-house forms. There's a buyer draft and a seller draft.
Okay, so you could
That's this exact same verbiage. It's just been made pretty thanks to Drew Burr.
Yeah, so you can send it directly from app files then, which is even better. Let me see if there's anyone else. Thank you for the update regarding printing. I thought it was unusual to not be able to pull the documents. Yes, yes. If you cannot print or download, please let IT know. Stuart, can you please let us know the number of the forms? So they're probably not numbered for these letters. They're probably just titled. So you can just go in there and search under in-house forms for these. I can go into app files and see if I can show you guys how to find it real quick.
All the forms that Harry Norman creates for you that are quote unquote in-house, you'll notice when you go into app files to search for forms, they're going to be categorized. And all of the in-house forms, like this letter, for example, is at the top of your categories.
So can you guys see my app files right now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the DPN. I had this pulled up earlier. This is that data processing, how you're going to get paid. This is an in-house form. And so for that letter, let's see how you find it. You just go to add forms. And if you want to search in-house forms right here, what would it be under, Emily? Maybe miscellaneous?
Can you go back, like when everybody goes just into app files so that they can see like when they first go? So if you go back to my app files home, so they just have like their, and then if you just go to print blank forms, Tori, like under your headshot.
Right there. Yeah.
Okay. And then if they just select, okay. So then they see all the in-house forms that are available
Here.
So if you scroll down, there's some that looks like need to be updated. Keep scrolling down. Okay, so all of these down here. So you see H&R seller closing letter, and you just scrolled past the buyer closing letter.
Okay. So, oh, here's the seller one. Perfect.
Yeah. So, and this has already been made into an editable PDF. So truly it's plug and play. You can send it straight from your app file, and same with that buyer closing letter. So,
let me see if I can pull up the
I
buyer.
think the details kind of mirror each other from what you showed, Tori. So
yeah, I think, well, I think what I showed is exactly where this came from. Yeah, it's the same information. So yeah, this is great. See, I'm learning something every day. That's why it's so nice that Emily is still here.
So it sounds like there's two ways to get there then. So we could either go to the print blank forms link, or we could go to add form. They're both going to take us to the same set of resources, documents?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go back and we can start with the seller side. Which a lot of this will be similar, so won't take us quite as long. So you are the listing agent and you have gone under contract. You've received your 25 offers and you've presented them to your buyer and they've or your seller and they've accepted a contract. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn the binding contract into your office via app files, just like we did with the buyer, and create an update to alert your office transaction coordinator. You're also going to complete the DPN in app files. So it's that same form that I just showed you in app files. And then create an update to alert them that you have completed it. And when you create an alert to let your office know that you have a binding contract, I always let them know that it's been uploaded, if there's earnest money involved, when it's going to be deposited. And again, each office may have specific things that they want you to include. Next, you'll want to send the binding contract and next steps and important dates email to your seller. Again, you want to let them know of all these important dates. Also, there's not going to be as much action involved on their part when they are the seller. They still need to be aware of these dates so they know when things are going to be coming to fruition. You know, the due diligence is really the main thing they're going to be concerned with, because they're going to have to let inspectors in the house. They're going to have to make the house available to the buyers so they can come through and conduct their due diligence. Let them know there may be questions they're going to have to answer about the house, not to get offended if the buyer's asking questions. They have a right to know about what they're purchasing. And also the closing date, they need to have that on their calendar because they are going to need to be there. Then add those important dates to your calendar. Same thing as when working with a buyer. This is going to help you stay organized with the auto reminders. It's important for you to know when that CD goes out, right? Because if the buyer has not acknowledged the receipt of the CD that 3 days prior to closing, closing is going to get pushed, right? Clear title, that's something that you need to be concerned with. Earnest money, when that's due, you want to make sure they turn in the earnest money when it is due and that they're not in breach of contract. Stay on top of these buyers agents. I mean, you're working with buyers right now. Everyone is slammed. They're running around. They may not have a process like you do. So you want to make sure that things are getting turned in and that you're aware of when this is happening. Next up, if you are going to have an amendment to address concerns, that's going to need to be into app files. Once you come to terms and it's signed and bound, you want to create an update to alert your transaction coordinator as well. Again, send all amendments to the closing attorney. Hopefully the buyer's agent is doing this. However, I always like to send them myself. It's better for them to get them twice than to not get them at all. Because again, not all agents have a process like we do, and they don't have this checklist. So you don't want, if your seller is, needing to do something, or if you're changing terms, you're reducing the price, etc., the closing attorney needs to be aware. And then complete the instructions to closing attorney in app files. Again, the buyer's agent may be doing this, but you want to get paid, right? So you want to make sure that's done and that all parties have received it, especially the closing attorney. So you get your paycheck and you get the right percentage. And then prepare an appraisal packet and meet the appraiser if there is an appraisal involved in the transaction, especially in this market, but in every market. This is very, very important to have communication with the appraiser as a listing agent. So what do you include in your appraisal packet? Number one, you want to include the comparable properties that you used to price the house. If there's been any upgrades, renovations, if they just put a new AC in there, or if the neighborhood is having a new pool put in, or there's a new development being going in nearby, anything that's going to increase the value of the home, you want to include that for the appraiser, because they may not be aware of that. Not all appraisers are from the area that they are appraising. So they're not familiar with the property. If it's an interesting or unique property, say it's, has something that not all the other houses in the neighborhood have, point that out to the appraiser. If most of the houses, don't have a basement and this one does, make sure you let him know that. I mean, hopefully they have done their research, but if, there hasn't been any recent sales, make sure that you point that out. Give them a story of the transaction. if there's multiple offers, if you have backups, et cetera, they need to know that. And then information on off-market listings is something I wanted to point out. In this market, we are having a lot of off-market listings. So if you know of one that's happened in the neighborhood that you used to price this home, get the information on it from the tax records if it's closed, so the appraiser knows about that, because they're not going to be able to see that in the FMLS. It was off market. So you'll also want to send your seller a pre-closing email, which we just saw in app files that we have the template for, which is awesome. They need to know directions to closing, the time and date, order a closing gift if you're going to do that for your seller. Schedule sign removal. So if you have used one of our beautiful wooden signs to be installed, go ahead and schedule the sign removal prior to closing. I mean, I would go ahead and schedule it once you get out of due diligence. Say that you want it removed the day of closing or the day after closing. I know the sign companies are pretty backed up. I heard recently an agent said that his sign could not get removed for a couple of days after closing. So go ahead and get that on your radar, so those buyers are happy that the sign is out of their yard when they move in. And if you used one of our standard signs, just make sure that you have that on your radar to go pick it up after closing, so that's out of their yard. And then also schedule sign, I'm sorry, I went over that. Schedule lockbox removal. Again, buyers do not want the lockbox on their door after closing. So after they do their final walkthrough, go pick up the lockbox or let them know at closing when you're going to be picking that up. And attend closing. Again, that's the fun part. Everyone gets to celebrate. I think there was something in the chat. Let me check that out really quick. Would a for sale by owner be considered an off-market sale? Yes, because that was not in the FMLS. So post-closing, these are going to be very, very similar to the buyer process. You're going to want to upload the final settlement statement to app files and notify your office the same way if you were representing a buyer. Turn in the commission check if it wasn't wired, because we want to get paid. Post sold or closed on social media so you can share your success and celebrate with your seller. Send a thank you card in the mail to the seller, letting them know that you enjoyed working with them, that you would love a referral, et cetera. If you're doing the community fund for Greater Atlanta and doing a donation, you can thank them for letting you do that. Then send an email requesting reviews, same thing that I mentioned earlier. They're going to get the QSC agent email, but if you want a specific one, you can send that. Okay, I just got another chat. Did you include making sure the seller has utilities and water on for walkthrough, et cetera, until transferred? No, I do not have that on there, but we should add that. So you want to make sure your seller knows that they need to keep the utilities and water turned on until after the walkthrough. That is a very good point. Thank you for sending that.
And then conversely, on the buyer side, they need to get it in their
They
name.
need to get it turned on. Yes. Let me add that to my to-do list. See, I love the engagement. We all learn from each other. Everyone has a different.
I said everyone's paying attention. This is good.
I know. This makes me happy.
And what about that 118 notice of closing form? Should that be up there with that upload final settlement statement?
I'm not sure if I know what Avery, Emily, anyone else on here that knows?
If you go to app files, it's if you're still in app files, it's a number 118 notice of closing.
So
Okay.
that is something that's actually done at the office level. So I know in town, like my staff members fill out that form for the agent.
Okay. I guess ours doesn't, so we get to do it ourselves. Okay. Thanks, Avery.
Sorry, you're just letting FMLS know that it is closing.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I didn't know what the purpose was, so that's great.
Okay, so Diane's saying to notify staff for FMLS. So is that something I need to add on here? Anyone? I never had to do that. Okay. And then change the seller's mailing address in the CRM if they've moved from the house. I mean, if this could be a second home or an investment property, you wouldn't need to change the mailing address. But I would definitely have this on your checklist because most of the time, I'm assuming you're going to be working with people on their primary residence that are moving. And then again, add the sold anniversary date in the CRM, and you can schedule a 1-year sold anniversary in the CRM also. I created my own template for that, where I just put a picture of their home and put a little message below. Can you believe it's been 1 year since we sold your house? I hope you're doing well, etc. And I think I skipped over this, send a thank you to your referral source. But again, if someone referred you to this client, same thing as when you're working with a buyer, you want to love on your referral sources throughout the year, no matter if they're sending you a referral or not. But again, if it is a specific transaction you're working on, keep them in the loop throughout the transaction, let them celebrate with you on the success, and just let them know how much you appreciate their support. And then just some tools that we covered. We've got the transaction checklist that I showed you, the PDF and the Excel files. I'm going to make sure I send everyone. I'm also going to send it to your brokers so they can share it with you and your whole office. The how to write a purchase and sale guide that I created for, when you're working on the front part of this to get under contract, that is on the cloud under working with buyers. And then we also have app files guides that will help you work through app files. Drew does app files classes, usually right after Agent Accelerate. So I would highly suggest taking an app files class. If you've not taken one, you can go watch those on the Harry Norman YouTube channel also for a reference. Would be really, really helpful for you. Let me see if there was anything else in the chat. Oh, Diane says it depends on the office. So make sure that you are aware of what your office requires for notifying the FMLS of a sold listing. Anyone, we're done a little bit early. So does anyone have any questions, specifics that I can cover, or anything that I didn't cover? And for the brokers that are on here, let me know if I missed anything. Yes, Stuart?
Really, really helpful, just practical class. This was awesome. So will this be under H&R training within 48 hours or so?
On the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I didn't know if it'd be under YouTube, or I thought it might be under the H&R training on the website.
So the recording, since Drew is out of town, this will be delayed about a week before the recording of the class gets posted on the YouTube channel. What I'm going to do is this afternoon, I'm going to send you an email with the links to everything we covered. So the links to the checklist, to these letters, etc. So you can use those. And there'll also be a link to the PowerPoint presentation if you want to look through it that way. And then I'll have Drew, when he gets back, make that an editable form, and we can put it into app files for you. Let me see. Someone said, can you show us again where the buyer pre-closing email is located in app files? Yes, I can show that to you really quick. All right, so when you are in app files and you're on your home screen, you can get to it from going to print Blake forms. And then you can go under in-house forms, and it's under H&R buyer closing letter. And then there's also H&R seller closing letter. And then you should be able to, once you're in an app file, let me go to this one. This is just like a test one that I did. If you can go to add forms, you should be able to find it here also. So let me see if I can find it like this. So I just typed in H&R, and I can find it this way under buyer closing letter. And I can add selected form, And then once I'm in here, I can edit it. So I could do Dear John Smith, put all the information in there. And then when I'm done, I can send this email directly through app files by going to send via email. Does that help?
Yes.
Good.